So we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Alright, so we're going to solve each equation by using the quadratic formula. Sometimes it becomes necessary to solve quadratic equations of the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c through the use of the quadratic formula. Remember, the quadratic formula states that x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where your values for a, b, and c are taken from your coefficients of your quadratic equation. So in example 1, they've given us the equation 0 equals negative x squared plus 2x plus 16, where our a value in this case happens to be negative 1, b is 2, and c happens to be 16. Using those values, we can plug them into our quadratic formula to solve for the values of x. So we've got negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 16 all over 2 times negative 1. So now we start to simplify. On the top we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, when we take 2 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 16, when we multiply and add all that together, we get 68 over negative 2 in this case. So it's negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 68 over negative 2. Well, this simplifies down into negative 2 plus or minus right around 8.25 over negative 2. At this point, we have a plus or minus situation at hand, so we have to solve for two different equation types. One where you have negative 2 plus 8.25 over negative 2, and one where you have negative 2 minus 8.25 over negative 2. Solving the top equation should give you negative 3.125, or right in that ballpark. Solving the bottom one, you're going to get right around 5.125. These are your values for x. These would be your x-intercepts, your roots, or your zeros for this quadratic function. Question 2, they've given us x squared minus 8 equals 2x. In order to solve this, we first need to write this in standard form, so we need to move the 2x to the left. So we end up with the equation x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Now we can pinpoint our values for a, which is 1, b, which is negative 2, and c, which is negative 8. And now we're going to use the quadratic formula again to find the values of x. So in this case, we have 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8 all over 2 times 1. So as we simplify this, we're going to get 2 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 2. Well, the square root of 36 is just 6, so we end up with 2 plus or minus 6 over 2. We break apart into our two equations, where we have 2 plus 6, which is 8, divided by 2, which gives us 4. And then we have 2 minus 6, which is negative 4, divided by 2, which gives us negative 2. So this is our solution. These are our solutions. So question 3, 7x squared plus 8x plus 1 equals 0. Well, our a value would be 7, our b is 8, and c is 1. Plugging this in the quadratic formula, you get negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 7 times 1, all over 2 times 7. So as we simplify what's under the radical, we get negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 14. Well, once again, the square root of 36 is just 6, so I've got negative 8 plus or minus 6 over 14, and I break this apart into my two equations. So that's negative 8 plus 6 which would be negative 2 divided by 14, which gives us negative 1/7. On the bottom, we'll have negative 8 minus 6, which is negative 14, divided by 14, which results in negative 1. So our answers are negative 1/7 and negative 1. Question 4, we've got 2x squared minus 28x equals negative 98. Well, we need to move the 98 in order to solve this, so we should get 2x squared minus 28x plus 98 equals 0. Now we know that our values of a is 2, b is negative 28, and c is 98. Using those values, we're going to plug them into the quadratic formula. So x equals x equals 28 plus or minus the square root of negative 28 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, and c, which is 98, all over 2 times 2, or 2 times a. So as we simplify this, we'll have 28 plus or minus, and then under the radical, the 28 squared and then minus the 4 times 2 times 98 all cancel out, and we're left with 0 all over 4. So the square root of 0 is pretty easy. It's just 0. So we have 28 divided by 4, which in that case equals 7. So for this one, it only has one solution, and our solution is 7. Question 5, we have x squared plus 8x plus 21. This one's set up for us. We've got our a value is 1, b is 8, and c is 21. So we're going to plug in to the quadratic formula and see what we get. X equals negative 8 plus or minus square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 21, all over 2 times 1. And so we start to simplify. And then the last problem, we've got 3x squared minus 11x minus 15. Well, before we start, we need to move the 15. So when we move it over by adding, we get 3x squared minus 11x plus 15 equals 0. So this means that our a value is 3, b is negative 11, and c is 15. So we're going to plug this into the quadratic formula. X equals 11 plus or minus the square root of negative 11 squared minus 4 times 3 times 15, all over 2 times 3. As we go to simplify what's underneath the radical, we recognize something, that this half of what's underneath our radical is negative, and it happens to be larger than our b squared value. So what happens is we get x equals 11 plus or minus the square root of negative 59 over 6. Well, as of right now, we don't know how to take the square root of a negative number, so this problem has no real solutions. And we're done. The last part of your notes contain questions 7 and 8, which are your lesson check. So pause the video right here, try both of these, and then unpause it to see what the answers are.